evening, and once again at Starr today on your Simply the Best on Radio Starr 103.5 FM. Coming up in the next 90 minutes. Leading the pack this evening, committee sacks with agenda of helping Mahama-led government reset the country and the economy, make key recommendations. Ghana draws the curtains on the national economic dialogue.
DOG makes the policy that SOEs raise capital using the stock exchange, and they comply with the Securities and Exchange Commission's corporate governance requirements, because these are requirements that talk about who should be on the board, the minimum qualification, who appoints the CEO. And these are good practices that have enabled private companies to be 200 years old. And these are good enough for all SOEs. So this is a request from us.
A request indeed, but we'll turn a spotlight on some of the recommendations being proposed at the closing of the dialogue plus here from a political science lecturer, senior one of course at the University of Ghana, Dr. Starr, who wants managing directors of state-owned enterprises to be subjected to key performance indicators. Away from the national economic dialogue, we'll head to Parliament, where the unidentified MP who made some disparaging comments against Clottey MP in hot waters as Speaker Agyabeng issues 1 week ultimatum to confess or face his wrath.
The spirit of honor, accountability, and decorum, I advise the member responsible for the remark to within a week choose the path of honesty, mea culpa, and opt for a plea bargain. Taking this step would demonstrate good faith and respect for parliamentary dignity.
We'll hear shortly from residents and traditional leaders of Anlo who have warned of dire consequences should the said MP fail to own up.
Not only apology, he has to go to the village and perform rituals, because we are also from a home, not a house. Look at this guy. I don't know him, who he is. Rollins is not just a president, he's a chief. If they don't like him, we like him.
From Finance Minister over water terms inability to fulfill promise of uncapping the National Health Insurance Funds.
Be a jeweler or a graphic designer. I want to be a student, print t-shirts, cars.
I think that having gone into office, the Minister of Finance sees that it is so difficult to uncap, which means it is so difficult to give all the resource envelope from the health fund to the National Health Insurance Authority. The only way to go about it is to say that there is misuse of resources and also there's a shortfall. It is not true. They are passing the buck. And I want the Finance Minister to accept and to admit.
Subsequent in the bulletin, two siblings, Fulera Lahayaya and Ibrahim Yahaya, both with disabilities, defy all odds to pursue their dream of becoming graphic designers and bank manager, respectively.
Be a jeweler or a graphic designer. I want to be a student, print t-shirts, cars, and jewelry.
I want to be a bank manager because I see that plenty people, they don't love those who are disability. And I never see a disability man who is working in a bank.
Your story and more in the 90 minutes broadcast. Do stay with us here on Starr Today.
Starr News is coming to you live on Ultimate 106.9 FM in Kumasi, Empire 102.7 FM in Takrady, Cool 103.5 FM in Ho, Rage and Might FM in Tamale, Somali FM in Wa, My Star Radio in the USA. Also live on Facebook, on Starr 1035 FM and on starfm.com.gh around the world. This is Starr 103.5 FM.
Many thanks for your company this evening. My name is Emmanuel. Agyabeng. As the country draws the curtains on the national economic dialogue in some few minutes, various committees tasked with the agenda of helping the Mahama-led government reset the economy are making key recommendations needed to achieve the agenda. Experts are making varied presentations to be incorporated into the upcoming budget in a bid to ensure a radical transformation of the country's economic trajectory. Among others, the private sector growth team have called on government to ensure state-owned enterprises raise their own capital from the stock exchange markets. Mr. Benamwa is the lead for that particular sector. Let's listen to her now.
As a second point of action for us, we think it's a low-hanging fruit. There are ways in which we can quickly improve our sovereign debt rating, which is currently in default. And so the committee is willing to sit with you, with the central bank, and see how we can quickly bring back confidence, not just for domestic investors, regional investors, and international investors around our corporate sovereign, our government sovereign rating. So that is an important thing. Your Excellency, policy consistency, coherence, and continuity across political regimes, as well as all sectors. Private sector frankly talked about the impact of breaks in policies and how it impacts our investments. This is one big ask that we want, so that there's a framework around how we discuss changes to policies and for us to plan and for investments to bear fruit. So these are very important areas that we think government can move the needle on. Next slide. From the Minister of Finance's presentation, we saw the state of many of our state-owned enterprises. And today we are cut out of international capital markets. And our state-owned entities problem requires that we develop strong domestic financial and capital markets. That is the base on which we must grow our economy. And so for the state-owned enterprises, weak governance and lack of access to finance is a bane of our SOEs. And what do we propose? That GOG makes a policy that SOEs raise capital using the stock exchange and they comply with the Securities and Exchange Commission's corporate governance requirements. Because these are requirements that talk about who should be on the board, the minimum qualification, who appoints the CEO. And these are good practices that have enabled private companies to be 200 years old. And these are good enough for all SOEs. So this is a request from us. COCOPOD and ECG, huge debts. 2015, we came up with a structure engaging capital markets that enabled us to ring-fence energy sector debts and ensure that our energy crisis was dealt with. So, our minister, let's look at engaging the capital markets again, especially for COCOPOD and ECG, around how we restructure their debts and give them room to operate. But we will demand the best corporate governance of these institutions, their transparency and accountability to the investors that create the room for them.
Abena Amwa there, speaking largely about capital markets. She is the managing director for the Ghana Stock Exchange, but that is not just what was the focus for them. They are also pushing for the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission to be converted into a national remuneration and productivity commission. Listen.
Vice President, we want to change the work ethic culture in Ghana. And we encourage not just public sector, but also private sector to enhance productivity and enable Ghana to become more competitive. We want performance management systems that pertain in the private sector to become more widespread, but also go into the public sector. So the principles of matching remuneration with productivity is something that we are going to hold dear and that we all must hold dear. We have a Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. We recommend that it be converted into a National Remuneration and Productivity Commission to focus and bring to attention what needs to be done. And that the ethics, the discipline that we see embodied in our military personnel, that every Ghanaian, of timekeeping, of taking accountability, of obeying the rules without asking who is asking me to obey the rules, must be inculcated, and a new spirit of the Ghanaian must emerge starting right now. So for the next steps for us, one of our key asks is that we believe that the macroeconomy is often diverged from the private sector. So Governor, we want the private sector to meet with the Governor, with the Bank of Ghana and the MPC frequently, I'd say at least twice a year, where you can hear us and see how the tools you have support growth and create employment in Ghana.
That was Agyabeng, who's the managing director for the Ghana Stock Exchange and the National Economic Dialogue. She was lead for the private sector, where they looked at key issues that would foster growth and stimulate business activity. But let's cross over to the conference center, Accra International Conference Center, and engage with broadcast journalist, our reporter here on the business desk, Calvin Powell. He joins me now with some more from the National Economic Dialogue. Calvin, what's currently happening? The panel session or still more reports and recommendations?
All right, so currently some sector ministers ranging from finance, energy, agriculture, and the like are currently being put to questions questions from the participants as to what they make of this presentation that's currently going on, and they are responding to questions from the plenary session right now.
Just gone by was the bite of Agyabeng, where she was talking about private sector growth and largely collaboration between the Bank of Ghana and private sector when it comes to making some monetary policy decisions. Has the finance minister yet addressed that? If not, what are the key issues that they have addressed so far?
All right, so the issues that they have addressed so far has to do with the suggestion that the bank recapitalization that sits at the Bank of Ghana should be put into some 10 billion fund to be given to targeted private companies that are into value addition to actually export for foreign exchange. So they actually agree to this suggestion that, well, it's a call in the right direction. It will be taken into maximum consideration and work around it, because the money is just there for safety. But if it can be put into further use to bring in more revenue into the country, it's a good suggestion that they would look at. And the other suggestion that has to do with recapitalization of the Bank of Ghana to actually bring down interest rate, inflation, depreciation of the Ghana cedi to stabilize the macroeconomic environment is also something that they would want to consider, because according to the people that made the suggestion, if the central bank is not robust, it will trickle down to other banks in the system, thereby making the financial system weak and also affecting general business doing in the country. So these are some of the suggestions that they are taking into consideration. Moving on, there has also been a suggestion of de-risking the business environment for women in particular in the country, in the sub-region, and also to make it easy for women businesses to tap into the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And they made mention that women face harassment at other entry points to other countries in the sub-region, and that should be added. There should be a robust policy to address this, because there shouldn't be a situation where women businesses are discriminated against when they are into cross-border transactions. So these are some few suggestions that have come up so far, and the committee members are having them look at, and in the coming days, they promise that they'll take them into proper consideration and make sure that these suggestions are put into proper use, that the 2 days dialogue is not going to be just a talk shop, but will be something that will bring about a turnaround of the generality of Ghanaians. Agyabeng.
Thank you so much for speaking with us and provide us updates from the National Economic Dialogue. Carvin is our reporter here with the EIB Network, sitting on the business desk. He's reporting live from the Accra International Conference Center. And he mentioned that a panel involving the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiela Tuforsen, the Minister for Energy, Honorable John Abdullahi Jinapo, among others, are discussing the suggestions that have been put forth by the various committees that were set up to look at various sectors of the country's economic developments. One of the key things they also look at is a recommendation from the Structural Reforms Committee, which was chaired by Dr. K.K. Sapon. The committee is proposing expansion in the revenue mobilization efforts of ECG. According to Dr. K.K. Sapon, ECG must ensure every household migrates to smart prepaid meters.
He was concerned that the operations of ECG is a drain on the national budget, and that the government dishes out more than $1 billion a year to keep the organization going. Then also, the organization has got a legacy debt, which he's wondering what to do with it, and that if nothing is done, by 2027, there will be a total debt of about $9.5 billion. So we set out to find out, how do we make ECG self-sustaining and stop the annual government expenditure of $1 billion, which is dished out to them. One of the issues we identified was high cost of electricity purchases from the independent power producers. Please, can you go back to the slide? No, the independent power producers. Please put that slide on. Well, we found out that the power purchase contracts came with high purchase cost. We're told that in some cases, ECG was part of the negotiations, others, they were not. But that cost is now with us. Our suggestion, our recommendation is that these power purchase agreements ought to be renegotiated. And we're told some serious work has already been done, and we think it should be taken to its logical conclusion, so that that cost, which in some cases constitute more than 80% of the power production cost, can be looked at. And then we take advantage of that. We also suggested that to bring the power purchase cost down, we should look at renewables. And when we talk about renewables, not just solar. We should look at wind, energy, and others. Once they will be produced and connected to the grid, the energy mix will result in a lower average cost, which will reflect in the tariff. We also noticed that the procurement of ECG is not competitive. And this is a point which was hammered home by many participants. And indeed, ECG management accepts that something ought to be done. We also discovered that ECG has got so much operational inefficiencies. There's high technical and commercial losses. And what was very worrying is the fact that the electricity they put into the market, they only recover, are able to get 62% of the value. The question which arises is, where does the 38% go? And if we get a 38%, what impact will it make on tariff determination as well as managing the 1 billion that we throw away every year? We think that ECG must expand prepaid electricity usage. If it's possible, every consumer must be on prepaid. Just like in the telecom industry. If you don't buy the card or the bundle, you cannot get a service. And we think that if we have prepaid meters installed, then we should be able to collect substantial part of the revenue. If we can't get 100%, we get 90, 95%, that would be a long way towards recovery. We say UCG should fully roll out boundary metering to determine how much power is being generated in an area and compare that with sales from that area to confirm any illegal consumption or theft. UCG must improve customer service by responding promptly to customer and meter fault complaints to drive revenue collection and financial performance. Sometimes when you call them, they don't come. And you may go a whole night without electricity. If we get it, we use it, we pay the money back.
To change the structure and operations of the electricity company of Ghana. But it's not just left to the structural developments in the economy. There is so much to say about macro stability, and the committee responsible, led by Leslie Dwight Mensah, is recommending for the Mahama-led government to review the value-added tax policy component. Let's have a listen to him as well.
This is quite important, that the tax regime is made to be predictable, and that will require that tax and revenue policy is conducted in a medium-term framework to allow the private sector to manage their operations in a macroeconomic environment that reflects certainty and predictability. On tax reform, we also urge that the VAT system be reformed. And this reform should aim to address the existing wide VAT gap. The present VAT gap is more than 50%. In other words, the actual VAT collection reflects less than half of what we should be collecting. So the reform of the VAT regime should aim at reducing the VAT gap. Now, as you conduct this reform, we advise also that you consider revising downwards the VAT rate to enable improved compliance and stronger collection.
Dwight Mensah, leading the committee responsible for macro stability at the National Economic Dialogue. But the committee is also proposing strengthening of the banking sector and financial intermediation. According to the Macro Stability Committee, governments must recapitalize the central bank. That's the Bank of Ghana. Let's listen once again to Leslie Dwight Mensah, who was speaking for the committee.
To review the foreign exchange retention regime in various sectors, including the mineral sector, to support exchange rate stability. On strengthening the banking system and financial intermediation, we call for the recapitalization of the Bank of Ghana to empower and strengthen the central bank to conduct its monetary policy and financial stability functions. We also call on the central bank to conduct a feasibility study and to develop a regulatory framework for non-interest banking. To strengthen financial stability, on top of measures already undertaken by the central bank, we call on the fiscal authorities to prioritize improving Ghana's sovereign credit rating, because the present rating situation of the country has been a major challenge to the operations of the banking system. So we invite the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Ghana to actually establish a desk between them that is responsible for engaging with the ratings agencies to update them about fiscal and monetary reforms, to update them about economic developments, to ensure that we influence.
Let's speak to banking consultant Dr. Richmond Echiahene for more on these recommendations from the Macro Stability Committee. Doc, good evening and many thanks for your time.
Good evening, sir.
We are grateful that you are able to speak with us on Starr today. A number of recommendations being put forth. The last one we are getting from Leslie Dwight Mensah largely is looking at recapitalizing the central bank. Do we need that? Do we have the space to do that? And can we afford to do that as a country?
Thank you very much. I mean, recapitalizing the central bank, the first memorandum was signed with the MPP government in April 2024. And September 2024, they reiterated that if there is a physical space, then the government should see how he can recapitalize. It's a conditional. It's not just a straightforward. I mean, I heard people talking as if you can't print more money. Don't forget, we're under the IMF program. And they know the physical space that we have. So they themselves have said that should there be any opportunity, we should begin to recapitalize it. So I was surprised the recommendation, and I believe Dr. Siama, the governor, who knows it, will say the same thing that we are saying. It's been put there for us, but it's not something you can do it today. Because there is no physical space. There is no physical space. So I think they just said what the IMF was saying, but they should have even quoted the IMF has said it already. And they signed the agreement with the former government, and I know it's something that the current government will continue with it.
Another recommendation that came from the Macro Stability Committee was one that had to do with strengthening non-interest banking, which is really what we say the ethical alternative to conventional banking. As a country, once again, my question: is there a need to strengthen that?
Currently, the situation we are in now, as I've always been saying, the macroeconomic environment is not very good at all. I mean, inflation 23-point-something%, currency depreciation still depreciating. If you want to introduce those non-traditional banking system, you first have to stabilize the economy. And the economy is not going to get stabilized today or tomorrow. So those who are talking about it should first understand that for that set of industry, for that set of banking, you need to have a stabilized system where, I mean, lower interest rate, stable currency. Other than that, it's not going to help the system aside. And again, the central bank would also have to begin to understand that side of banking, because that will be the first time we're going to do that. So it is something we will possibly do, but not now. It will take a little bit of time.
That said, looking at conventional banking in itself, how best do we improve access to credit facilities to stimulate growth in the private sector? Largely non-performing loans. I would have to cross-check and get the figures as to how best we are doing as a country.
I can give you the figures start from 2015 up to as I'm speaking to you.
Rightly so.
Yes, it is in front of me, so I can tell you.
Right. So
the non-performing has been an albatross on the sector for currently about 10 years now. And we are the only country, even in sub-Saharan Africa, whose non-performing has exceeded the acceptable international level of 10%. We have played the game from 14% up to 22.1 or 21.8, the December one. So number one, we need to devise a strategy. I like Dr. Siama in his delivery, and I was very happy he stepped on, that we need to look at the non-performing. Otherwise, forget about solvency of the bank, especially certain banks, the 9 banks. Because they have gone to, he just said, one bank has got 62% non-performing, which I knew. If we don't address the non-performing, we're not going to solve the solvency of the banks, especially the 9 banks. I mean,
indigenous bank. And you can only resolve it. You see, you can only do that by sitting down with the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Energy, Minister of Roads, and then asking him, would there be a physical space to design? We will reference what we have and then design a repayment to the contractors and the energy sector over a period of, say, 5 years. We have done it before in 2011, although the debt was not as huge as it is now. But we may have to design, sit down with the finance minister. Can you create a space for us, the 35 billion? Can you create a space for us so that every month or every quarter we're able to pump in maybe 4 billion, 5 billion for both the energy and the non-energy sector? These are the strategies. If you go to such conference, this is what I expect people to come out with. It's not just reiterating the problem. The problem everybody knows, but you design a strategy. But I heard their submission. I didn't see. So when Dr. Siyama came on the phone, I heard him say this thing, and that is why I'm commending him for saying that, because it is too dear to some of us. Otherwise, we can forget about the 9 banks. We can forget about the 9 banks, and you know, it's fine. The foreign banks don't do GOG contracts. Ghana government, no. It is a Ghanaian banks, especially the state banks, which are forced to go into the road and the energy and for you. So we need to design a strategy. And the strategy is what I'm telling you. Reference the existing debt, do a repayment plan every year from the finance to the banks so that we reduce the non-performing and improve the solvency of the banks.
The banking operations and look at the central bank and its regulatory duty of ensuring that monetary policy align best with our fiscal strategy as a country. The private sector committee at the National Economic Dialogue, they are calling for the Bank of Ghana to actively engage business when it comes to the business community, that's the private sector, when it comes to monetary policy deliberations. Often before the policy rate is set, we have the MPC meetings. Now they are calling for a broader engagement that extends beyond just the monetary policy committee, but involves the business community. Just as when we are about to present the budget, the finance minister will meet with all the various groups, AGI, GUTA, GPRTU, TEU, and all of that, TUC. They are calling for same before the key lending rates of the states is determined. Is this a feasible action?
Well, it is feasible, but whether it's workable, there are two things here. Is it feasible? Fine. But is it workable? The reason being is that, you see, this inflation targeting and the policy rates are actually based on something we did in 2007. We have tried it for nearly 18 years or 19 years. We don't seem to understand. We need to tweak it, because, you see, when we did the inflation target, which is related to the policy rate, what was that? Ghana was not serious importing country. I mean, when I say importing, we're importing. But today, we are importing rice to close to 1 billion. We are importing tomatoes. We are importing everything you can think of. So if we don't get the agri sector very well, develop it very well, who can produce what we call the import substitution to produce so much quality for the local market, then it means that you're not going to import. Once you import inflation. With a weaker currency, once you import from overseas, you import it. So you now decide to do your capacity building to support the indigenous producers to produce more, so that we rely less on the import. Unfortunately, most of the private sector are not in the sector where they also add too much value to it. When I say that, some of them are based on importing raw materials and putting in the finished here. Because before you say jet, that has been imported, inflation has come into it. So we should be very selective. I mean, we should pick a model which I will always tell people that go and study their Champon document, General Champon document, and you see how these things were functioned out. The private sector, when we say Ghana, people say private sector. But if you go to Nigeria and we talk about private sector, you really see private sector. You see private sector walking along. Here, it is very difficult because it has not developed the internal capacity to talk about, saying, what do we do with yams, potato, plantain? What do we do with it? If the private sector person is there and actually adding value to it and exporting. Then you target such private sector with a lower interest rate. But the interest rate cannot come down because we have a higher inflation. We have a depreciation of the currency. So if you really want to address it, then you need to have more foreign exchange into your system. And where do you have it? Because cocoa is giving you only 1.2 billion. Gold is giving, the maximum gold gave us last year is about 1.7 billion out of the 11 billion export. So basically, you're only looking at cocoa and gold. And cocoa and gold gives you about 3 billion. And the remittances, which I believe at this forum, somebody should have spoken on the remittances critically. Because the remittances, even the remittances to Bank of Ghana balance sheet 2023, is far bigger than cocoa and gold. But when we met at the forum, I heard nobody talk about remittances. And Dr. Addison, before he left, one of the policy paper, economic data he released, he said Ghana was expected to have received 6.6 billion at 2024. And nobody is talking about that issue. How do we track them? If we track all the remittances, my brother, the city would move from 15 and come to 10, because that alone is 6 billion. Bigger than cocoa twice, bigger than gold. But when we meet like this, these issues that are supposed to be devise a strategy to be able to attract, capture, to fit into the foreign exchange, you don't hear it. You hear so many things. And people are saying that create retention and export retention. What do you export? You don't export. So what retention are you keeping? The non-traditional export is not in any way comparable to even cocoa or gold. It's not like other countries like Côte d'Ivoire, where the non-traditional is so huge. So if you talk about retention, what is retention going to do with foreign exchange depreciation? But remittances is so key. It's so key. In all the monetary policy, the microeconomic study, once you get the more dollars in, or remittance, euros or pound, it will stabilize the currency. Inflation will come down. Unfortunately, at the meeting, I never heard anybody talking about it. And I find it, what is this that we are talking about? Because we so much depend on cocoa and gold. And these things are not, cocoa this year, I'm not sure we'll even do 400,000 metric tons. So, my brother, we have a long way to go.
Long way to go, as you rightly say. But looking at largely the national economic dialogue, from your comments, am I to take it that you are not by far impressed with the policy proposals?
I am impressed. No, I am impressed. Because, you see, at times when problems are there, we need to highlight it. But we must also try a solution to most of the problems. And I was more interested in the banking sector when I heard them talking about the Bank of Ghana capitalization and what have you. That's what I say. But if you listen to other speakers who are speaking, I've heard people who speaking there, and I know the economist people are speaking, and they are so emphatic about it. But I'm talking about strategic areas. Strategic areas. One, I'm giving it free, as I always give to people. They should come back and commission somebody to look at the remittances, and you see how much we can get from remittances to solve some of these problems. I'm happy we have said it, but let us not be one of those projects that we put on the side table or the board. Let us, every 6 months, let somebody come and give us the detail of what has happened and how we are going through these things. It will help the whole country to reset the agenda that we want to set.
Dr. Richmond Etienne, thank you so much for speaking with us here on Starr today.
Thank you, my brother.
Grateful for your time. Dr. Richmond Etienne is a banking consultant. We have been discussing largely suggestions that have been put forth by the Macro Stability Committee, which was led by some top gurus, economists, and their speaker was Leslie Dwight Mensa, who is with the IFS. And they make some recommendations, including recapitalizing the central bank. And Dr. Richmond Etienne is saying that we need to ensure that we have the fiscal space before we even consider doing that. There was a suggestion about the non-interest banking, where largely banking activities being operated with Islamic principle there, where no interest on is just based on collaboration and partnership. It says that we need to monitor our space to see whether we are able to allow it. The matter of non-performing loans came up where we looked at really how we have performed as a country. Data from what Dr. Richmond Etienne tells us indicates that as a country we are performing poorly on that particular tangent. And then there was also the recommendation as well to ensure that there is much more collaboration between the Bank of Ghana and not just the Monetary Policy Committee, but also with the private sector-led businesses when it comes to setting the key lending rate of the state, that is the policy rate. He do believes that it is feasible. We need to see whether it is workable. So that these and more coming from the National Economic Dialogue. After this break, we have more coming to you, Steve.
Today, first, fast, and credible.
We take you to the words of the Finance Minister, that is Dr. Kasiel Ato-Forson, and here at the National Economic Dialogue, he was raising concerns over the dire financial and operational challenges confronting state-owned enterprises and joint venture companies. He warns that urgent reforms are needed to prevent further economic decline.
Almost all state-owned enterprises are in the red. Almost all of them are in the red. From the Electricity Company of Ghana to the Agricultural Development Bank. Almost all of them are in the red. In fact, beginning from the year 2021, 2022, and 2023, you will see that Cocoa Board posed some profit of 2.2 billion in the year 2023. Your Excellency, this is artificial profit. This profit is because they failed to service their debt because of the debt suspension. And so all the cocoa bills that were due at the time, they failed to pay because of debt suspension. Subsequently, this debt still exists, and so we will need to take action to restructure most of the state-owned enterprises.
Well, senior political science lecturer at the University of Ghana, Dr. Asa Asante, has been reacting to this with a call on managing directors of state-owned enterprises to be subjected to key performance indicators. He spoke on the Morning Star.
We are missing two or three things. One, there should be a standard operating procedure for them. There should be a target for which they should achieve. And there should be resources to push them, for them to fall on to be able to discharge their work not only effectively, but most efficiently. And above all, there should be a monitoring system to touch base with the ground and see what is being done, whether they are in tune. But the state-owned enterprises should be able to uplift their game and then provide what is needed for the state. That is all.
So clearly, there are solutions, but it looks like over the years, we rather see these enterprises take a nosedive in terms of their profitability. Now we are told STC is in debt. Many of these enterprises are not being, they're not living up to standard. And you have listed these points. How come these are lost on the leadership of the country?
The only answer to your question is that we don't want to do it. I am not the unintelligent person more than any person in this country. People have superior minds, but that one, they are not giving opportunity. Two is
Hello, Doc, I'm losing you, so if you could just reposition so that we can get a clearer, it is clearer now.
All that I'm saying that, look, there are people who are ready to work. They have no resources to work with. There are people who are working. There is no supervision to see whether they are doing what is expected of them. And then there is also a system that doesn't care a hoot about if it has thrown money out, it wants to ensure value for money. If we get all these basics right, I tell you, no problem is unsurmountable. You'll be able to surmount all problems and make life better for everybody. Look, there is no problem that there is no way out of it. Far from it. People will tell you, is it rocket science? Even rocket science, people study it. So what is it that we cannot do? But except that we have taken a nonchalant attitude to managing state resources because it doesn't come from our own pocket. That is the crux of the matter. If we apply ourselves to all the things we do and take into consideration that we are working for ourselves, I tell you, the game will change. Are we there? We can be there, provided we make a conscious effort to make sure that we get there. And then those who are managers of the political office, the appointing authority, should not be able to step on toes when the need arises. They are very much afraid for loyalty reasons and for other reasons known to them. Please, there shouldn't be anything.
That was Dr. Asa Asante, senior political political lecturer with the University of Ghana. Away from that, to the legislative arm of government, Speaker of Parliament Alban Summana Kingsford Bagbin has given an unidentified MP who labelled Clotty Colley MP Dr. Zaneto Agyabeng Rawlings as the daughter of a murderer a 1-week ultimatum to own up and confess. The controversial remarks which were made towards Dr. Zaneto and her late father, former President, Flight Lieutenant retired Jerry John Rawlings, has incurred the wrath of residents of Anlo and their traditional leaders as well as those of Clotty. One will ask, what were those comments which have been described as unsavory? Listen.
Let's hear you. Mr. Speaker, under normal circumstances, a commemorative statement is not to generate debate. I would want to remind the House that these are national heroes. Some are on our side, some are on their side. So let us be mindful how we react when it's our turn. Obviously, there will come a time that a statement will be made in honor of the hard work of former President Nkrumah, Liman, Jerry Rawlings, Professor Mills, and all. Let us, Mr. Speaker, let us focus on their contribution. Mr. Speaker, honorable members. Honorable members.
One of the MPs who was suspected to have made those comments, Damango MP Samuel Abujinapo, has categorically denied being behind those unsavory comments. He spoke earlier to Starr News.
Anybody who has followed my career and followed my involvement in Ghanaian public life will in all modesty attest to the fact that I don't speak in that nature. I don't speak in that manner. The words which are being falsely attributed to me are not words that I will ever use. That's not the way I speak. Secondly, I didn't even know that such words had been uttered. I found that this morning when this trending video was brought to my attention. And what I can say to that is that it's totally false. It cannot be correct. I mean, anybody who's followed my life and career will come to the conclusion that Abujinapo will not speak that way. I don't even speak across the aisle when I'm in Parliament. If I have anything to say, I make the effort to catch the speaker's attention, and I say it publicly. So it is totally false. I have huge respect for President Rawlings. Anybody who knows me very well knows that when he was alive, he took a lot of interest in me, and I visited him multiple times. Indeed, when he passed, on this floor in Parliament, the person who read the tribute in honor of the memory of former President Jerry John Rawlings was the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, the then minority leader. I was then the first time, and indeed that was the first time I spoke on this floor. I was the one who seconded the minority leader and supported and contributed and eulogized President Rawlings on the floor of Parliament. Hansard will bear me out. When his children set up this foundation for tree planting, I was a guest of honor, and it's on record what I said about former President Rawlings. Indeed, I had a very personal relationship with him. I have a lot of respect for him, and I have a lot of respect for his family, particularly his daughter, the Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Senator Rawlings, and I will never utter such words. It will not even cross my mind, because as I say, in all humility and modesty as a gentleman, I don't speak in that manner.
Well, this denial, among others, has led to some groups petitioning Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin to act decisively. Before that, my colleague Zuleiha Nuhu was at the Clotty constituency to gauge the mood of residents there.
This issue or this matter, Senator shouldn't sit on this matter. I think she must do something about it because me self, I don't understand a daughter of a murderer. So if they should sack him from parliament or Senator should take the case to court so that he will explain himself.
Asemna ebanu enya fine. Senator or young kasa your sister. Ni papa kasa kura or didi beans no yo na kan no enti dia papa no kan no enya right so be kasa say ye ba obetumi akasa asem no a kire no enti papa no say me a yempam no kwa ewo parliament na yensiu no so nka ho
wo duni egba wo na wa ke wo kenye wo male me ke egba amko na mi ko beto egba na wa okay sani e use na kan we de halelo do bia ne ke akele ye won fa ke ba Jubilee House nínú ní parliament ẹjọ nínú ní sa wọ́n bá ká mi ẹ̀jẹ̀ mi ní àṣẹ ìfẹ́ náà àṣẹ ní sànà àtẹ̀kẹ́ against mọ̀ jẹ́ lóko ní mọ̀kò yàsẹ̀ akẹ́ ní ilẹ̀ àṣẹ àmẹ́gbẹ́ yìí jẹ́ lóko náà àṣẹ àmẹ́gbẹ́ yìí ẹ̀jẹ̀ akẹ́ máa ń wọ̀yọ̀ mo fẹ́ mọ̀ ẹgbẹ́ ife ayé lè yí wọ́n lọ fẹ́ alẹ́ sùnmọ́ táwọn kò tẹ̀sí ẹ̀mí lọ́wọ́ bá kẹ́ lákẹ́ lẹ́kẹ́ àṣìmáṣe lẹ́kẹ́ bí ṣe táṣì ní ẹ̀ papa àgbègbè mọ̀ yẹ sànà àlẹ́ àní àtsọ̀ vote àbí yẹ sànà mẹ́tẹ̀sì to boni wo game what is here ame on sana metish ni no ni sagbe na kala yi
Ronnie say je modra ni ni bi ni ya no e Ghana na e da ni Ronnie ke papa wa me ne wa wole junior Jesus say ke fi awie mo ne politician say for awie mo shinyele ni bi ni ya no wo ye Ghana ni ke wo ba yi secret wo ba yi tinapa wo ba yi milk wa to lie wo yo ye buzi and Steven C segbe wo to lie wo to 3 o'clock wa to lie ni ahon wo na ko wo yi nipi ni ya no Ghana ne Dani Roms ke papa wa je somo ni ye wo ma efite kura Dani papa wa
enya fe kura enya fe se o to me kan sa asem enya fe ya asuma mu ye de ye kokromoti asuma mu eho se mu ko ye adwuma pa ma ye na eman no enkoso e ben wo tu ame parliament na ma tu ni papa me ha Ghana ameta me no ye parliament ba me jeje me ni no we je wula esa no wula yu onakan no just Senator and Senator jeje egboche alo egbonye thank you very much jeje egboche alo egbonye ma chame ni jeje gbe ano che fitahe o che fitahe what to the parliament nya tu ni papa nye ha mangana wa ka nya anya be Senator be igba na ba yu enoko Senator ebe igba na ba Senator e wo se on ka bibi se Senator aka nsem kura e won ya so be ka chen se okono ko trasi onu na oku ni papa asine what to Senator aka ya tu ni papa ho suma ni Senator ete o ka yu Senator ya igba na yu eko o ka Senator yu eko e minu esa no jele no ka ele neke.
Well, earlier today, pressure was again brought to bear on the House of the Legislature when petitioners from the Unlaw Traditional Council stormed the Parliament with a demand for the House and the Speaker to act. Speaking to Starr News, a former women's organizer for the NDC, Anita Desoso, warned of dire consequences if the said MP refuses to own up.
As an MP, definitely we have to come to the Speaker. And I know that the person cannot deny. So the moment he comes out, then we know how to deal with him. But if he refuses to report to, we know what to do.
What exactly are you expecting from such a person? An apology will suffice or what?
Not only apology. He has to go to the village and perform rituals. Because we are also from a home, not a house. Look at this guy. I don't know him, who he is. Rollins is not just a president, he's a chief. If they don't like him, we like him. And he has been in power for so many years. And he has done a lot of things. So why should you tag him that he's a murderer? So he should come and prove to us the people that he saw Rollins killing them.
Does the fact that the person did not speak into the microphone take anything away from the gravity of what he said?
My brother, we just want to see him personally. But if he dare not come, Plan 2 will come.
Which one is the Plan 2? Have you placed a
When
case
we
on
get
the
there, I will tell you the Plan 2.
Initially, we were told that the gods had their own way of dealing with the person.
If the gods, before the gods act, we need to go first, look for the person, let the person speak the truth, If we need him per quarter, if he has to perform some rites, fine. But if he refuses to come, then we'll give it to the gods. But now, we are handling it.
How much grace period does this individual have before coming out?
No, we won't push him. We'll not talk about that. You can't wash all our dirty linen outside. We are just advising him to come out to say sorry from his heart. From his heart. Because why should you use that word? Why?
Finally, are you assured by Parliament that there will be action?
My brother, we have done our best. Now, let's wait for another one.
Now the Speaker says investigation is already.
They have to do that. Yeah, so
what do you make of the Speaker's statement?
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. So maybe by 2 weeks' time, the man will come out. If he comes out and the whole world of Ghanaians get to know him, within his heart, he will always be guilty. And even if he's not very careful, his children yet unborn will face that consequences.
Anita, the source there, was speaking after the House received the petition. Speaker Bagbin announced the investigations have already commenced into the disparaging remarks.
In the course of the parliamentary proceedings on 4th February this year, an honorable member of this House was subjected to an unwarranted, unjustified, and deeply offensive, reckless remark, or being referred to as, for want of a better way to convey the remark, quote, the daughter of a murderer. I apologize for having to even repeat it. The unsavory remark was uttered off microphone from a seat of the minority side of the House in reference to the honorable member. I extend my deepest apologies to Honorable Dr. Zaneto Agyabeng Rawlings, Member of Parliament for Klote Kole, Her Excellency Nana Kunedu Agyabeng Rawlings, the former First Lady of Ghana and widow of our late illustrious President, the family, the chiefs, and all the good people of Anglo Duko and Anglo land. No one serving their country should have to endure such indignity. Consequently, a formal investigation has been initiated to determine the identity of the member who made the comment. Subsequent to which, in line with standing orders 218 and 219, the Committee of Privileges and Immunities and Ethics and Standards shall be called upon to consider the referral and report to the House. In the spirit of honor, accountability, and decorum, I advise the member responsible for the remark to, within a week, choose the path of honesty, mere culpa, and opt for a plea bargain. Taking this step would demonstrate good faith and respect for parliamentary dignity, rather than awaiting the outcome of the ongoing investigation, which will ultimately uncover the member who made the statement.
Majority Leader Mahama Agyabeng on his part assured the support of his side into such an investigation. Minority Chief Whip Frank Anot Dompre on his part, however, argued the comments were triggered by some offensive remarks made by the MP for Tamale North and Minister for Environment Murtala Mohammed.
As an MP, definitely we have to come to the Speaker, and I know that the person...
Speaker, we are indeed very grateful to you. And Mr. Speaker, I will join you to urge colleagues to be decorous in the way that we conduct ourselves in the chamber. I believe that the investigation that you have launched will definitely unravel the individual who engaged in such a reckless comment. And I also urge whoever it is to own up as directed by the Speaker. And I want to assure this House that when we ultimately establish the identity of that person, the full weight The full weight of this side of the House will stand firmly behind the Privileges Committee when they seek to exact the highest penalty.
I'm hoping we can bring this matter to a close, but I'm taken aback that mine has taken close to 3 weeks. The Speaker had assured that we will engage the two of us. I am reliably informed the lady was invited. I was not invited. Speaker, I'm just bringing this to your attention. But I will leave the decision in your bosom. And you are experienced and clothed with the powers to guide this House in all matters. So I will just bring this to your notice and hoping that we can bring finality to it.
Let's go over the phone lines now and have a conversation with the Executive Director for the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. That is in the person of Dr. Rashid Draman. We'll be engaging him pretty shortly. And it's largely going to be in respect of the comments that was made on the floor of Parliament some time back, which we are yet to identify the Member of Parliament who made that very disparaging and unsavory comments concerning the former President John Jerry Rawlings, Flight Lieutenant retired, and even his daughter, Dr. Zeneto Agyabeng Rawlings, on that particular matter. But we have Dr. Rashid Draman now on this particular matter. He is the Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Doc, good evening and thanks for joining us on Starr today.
Good evening.
We'll begin off with the comments that was made in Parliament. All of us recognize it was unsavory. The Speaker announces that an investigation is ongoing on the matter after a petition was brought before him. The Majority Leader speaks to it, saying his side would support. However, there seems to be the politics of equalization, which is coming from the minority side, where the Chief Whip says, well, it is wrong, but then it was because someone from your side provoked someone from our side to say this. And in respect of the ongoing deliberations on the matter, was this the right approach from the minority on this?
Well, I mean, let me start by saying this to you. Just last week, Thursday, I went to a primary school in my neighborhood. They invited me on their career day and asked me to talk about the work that I do. So I spoke to the children about Parliament. And children as young as 6, 7 years old. And question after question is about the conduct of our members of Parliament. Why are they fighting? Why are they corrupt? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? And I think conducts like this, comments like what the person is alleged to have made, are things that give rise to these issues. We know that based on data and research that has been done, Afrobarometer, NCC, and so on, citizens don't trust members of Parliament. And one would have thought that that level of trust is only maybe limited to the adult population. But here we are, even our kids have very little regard for those who are supposed to be our role models and those who are supposed to be, people that we look up to hold duty bearers to account. And this is the kind of behavior that we get from the House. Well, I guess it's quite unfortunate. So this equalization and all the things that we are hearing coming out, please, they must stop it. And if a matter has to be investigated which borders on issues of contempt or language that is not parliamentary, whether it's NDC or MPP that is caught up in it, I think they should do us a favor by making sure that they uphold the dignity of the House.
Upholding the dignity of the House. When in the aftermath of this unsavory comments, people had cause to say that the most dignifying thing to do would be that the side from which this comment was made, the whip would put the person to order, and then behind the scenes, perhaps some apology gone on, and perhaps the person would have come forth to do the needful. But to get to this point where petitions have been raised and for the speaker to give an ultimatum, I know it paints a very sad picture of our parliament, but you have studied the House and its proceedings for so long a time. How do we bounce back from this?
Well, I think, like you rightly said, I mean, the right thing that should have been done, because they know who said it and they know where it came from. They know. We have names. I mean, we have the name of the person. I mean, this whip, should have done the needful by making sure that, look, I mean, this is not right. There's no way that you can justify this anywhere you go. I mean, no matter which political side you belong to. It's very, very unpalatable. I mean, this is somebody who is sitting in the House. She's their colleague, no matter how much you are provoked. So if they had, engaged in resolving this in a very quiet and peaceful way among themselves, I believe we wouldn't have gotten to where we are now. So it's a lesson to all of them. I think when going forward, Parliament would have to take these matters of privileges and immunities very, very seriously. Otherwise, I think we'll get to a day where the citizens will be up in arms and nobody can defend Parliament anymore.
Dr. Doran, in your submission, did I hear you right saying you know who made this particular unsavory comment?
Yes, we have heard about who the person is, but I can't say that on this platform.
That is the former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources has denied. It means it's not him?
No, I'm just telling you that with information, but I mean, that's not for me to say it. What we are discussing now is the fact that however you cut it, this is not right. And it tarnishes their image, all of them, the 276 members in the House. Children don't distinguish between NDC and MPP. Citizens don't distinguish between NDC and MPP. When the image of Parliament is sinking, it's all the 276 members.
Dr. Drummond, I mean, are you willing to, the Speaker has given a 1-week ultimatum, but are you willing to furnish his office with the details of the person, given that you're not happy with the comments that came up?
Well, no. I mean, if the Speaker's office wants to get the name of the person, I think they know what to do. And that's why the Speaker gave the ultimatum. I believe he also has the name. Because if you give an ultimatum for a person to own up, or there will be consequences, I mean, you know what that means.
But given that the person knows that, I mean, the comments in the chamber, it could be reviewed. People would obviously see him make those comments. People would hear her make those comments and all of that, but still sits aloof and sits a bit unconcerned. I mean, it could be that perhaps the person will not turn up within the 1 week. Out of all of us performing our citizens' duty, why not furnish the Speaker's office with the name?
Well, look, are you doing an interview about my views on this matter, or are you trying to drag me into providing names?
I'm largely taking your thoughts and comments on this, but as well, I mean, we all helping the state to ensure we are all not happy with those unsavory comments. So yes, I'm just wondering, should they approach you? Would you be willing to give them the name?
Yes, if they approach me, I'll tell them the name that I have, based on what I have been told from Parliament.
But others will also say that this particular comment was made off the record. It should be allowed in passing.
No, it shouldn't be allowed. Honestly, it shouldn't be allowed. Because you don't know what other comment tomorrow somebody else is going to make. And we don't want our members of Parliament sitting in the House and insulting each other. Tomorrow, when somebody wakes up, in the House and then starts insulting the majority leader or the minority leader or even the Speaker. Today, somebody made a comment in the House the Speaker was making a submission that, especially the new members in the House, he says that some of you, very few days old in this House, and somebody told the Speaker it doesn't matter. Is that where we want to go? I think it's not about the Speaker, it's about the respect for that office and the respect for that institution of Parliament. So I'm all for anything that would discourage this behavior that gives our democracy a very bad name.
Right. Now,
because we are all working to strengthen this democracy that we have. At the end of the day, if we lose this, I think I don't know what we are going to sell. Especially living in a region, a sub-region that is very notorious for military adventurism. And by the way, let me tell you, Afrobarometer recently did a study, and among the top 5 trusted institutions in our country, the military is number 1, and Parliament doesn't feature in that top 5. Is there no message in this for all of us? And the accumulation of these kinds of behavior, I think, is what is giving rise to this perception that citizens hold. And it goes down and down even to children who are as young as 6 years old.
Now, confidence in our legislature and inspiring the generation that is to come. Let's move by the Speaker to ensure that the right thing is done. Well, let's instill confidence.
I don't understand your question.
Confidence in our legislative arm of government to ensure that the manner in which they conduct their business is decorous. It leaves the generation to come with something to look up for, given the direction that Speaker Bagman has taken. Even if the sanctions that are going to be meted out to this person is not even adequate, is not even adequate, does this bring back some level of confidence in parliamentary business?
Well, I don't know what you heard, but if you remember a few weeks ago during the fight, the Right Honourable Speaker took some immediate action by saying that a number of members of Parliament were suspended from the House. You remember that?
I do remember that.
If you go to social media and you talk to people, you talk to our compatriots, a huge majority of the citizens of this country were behind the Speaker, even if some say he violated some law. We need to do everything possible in order to restore some dignity, not only to Parliament, to our politics. The MPs themselves know. If you hear the minority leader a few days ago during the lecture organized by the OSP, he made it clear. He said people don't trust us, people think that we are corrupt. That's the view that is out there, and if you do anything that fuels that perception, I think it only makes the image of Parliament worse. So all we are saying is, no matter who is caught in anything that is not decorous, I think Parliament must be very firm. The Speaker must, together with the leadership, must take action, because in the long run, I think it's for the good of the institution that they all belong to. That institution which houses 276 members plus the Right Honourable Speaker.
Dr. Draman, thank you so much for speaking with us here on Starr today on this particular matter.
Thank you.
Dr. Rashid Draman is the Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, ASEPA.
Starr Today, burst, fast, and credible.
Away from that to the Volta region, where hundreds of residents in Salakope, Mutini, and Agaveji in the Cape South municipality have been left homeless after powerful tidal waves swept through their communities. As families struggle to find shelter, concerns are mounting over the lack of immediate intervention and long-term solutions to the recurring crisis. There's more in the following reports.
This has become the daily routine of the residents of several affected communities in the Ketu South municipality. Once thriving coastal communities, Salakope, Amutinu, and Agaveji, now lie in ruins as devastating tidal waves have rendered hundreds homeless. The disaster has forced families to take refuge in the streets, churches, and makeshift shelters. While residents call for urgent government intervention, opinions are divided on the best course of action.
Malaria 4 or 5 days today because of the spoiling of the seed. That's why we are all sleeping here. Our places, all our houses, all are destroyed by the sea. It's almost 4 or 5 days today. We have a family.
Some advocate for the continuation of the sea defense project, while others believe dredging the sea would offer a more lasting solution.
They should find some engineer to come and shoot the sea sand to the outside of the land. There is no deep in, for the sea because it's a swallow place.
And our issue is, they said the government is coming to do some work for the sea inside. We are pleading to the government to come our aid because we are suffering too much. Yes, the suffering is going too much. All the time, this evening, around 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, it will start again.
No matter do chafo ko amwala gagagara muoma ni odrava wa mi gata mo poga awdo akomo ko idomo atrogo aflawu tukata mi magata ino
na chafo ba homo ya afia ba mi aba itore tefobu na onya ba mi agja wo 1 cedi agbona yega 2 cedis afuraga mi na mi achichara pa.
Adding to their frustration is an abandoned housing project meant to provide 105 housing units for affected families. Years after its launch, only 11 structures have been partially built, with just 4 roofed, but none completed for use.
Let's engage with Professor Kwesi Apianinyado, who is a professor in coastal processes at the Department of Marine and Fisheries Sciences and the former director of the Institute for Environmental and Sanitation Studies at the University of Ghana, Legon. Prof, good evening.
Good evening.
This issue of tidal waves and its impact on various communities affecting livelihoods and even development of people, young people, education, among others. What is the clearest causative factor? We know climate crisis is leading to rising sea levels, but what really is the cause? Why are we seeing communities along the coast really being washed off?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having